turning to additional conversations on July 18, 2019. Do you see those?
I do.
Okay. What, if any, significance to the investigation and or investigators' follow-up did this text communication have?
This short series of texts between Lori-Vallow and Chad Daybell is critically important because it is the first overt communication between them referencing the pending deaths of JJ and Tylee.
Okay. Can you read to us the text communications we're seeing on slides 20?
Yes. Line 2667. I have been instructed, from Chad Daybell to Lori-Vallow. I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary, so I will. Line 2665 from Lori-Vallow to Chad Daybell. Okay, find out her percentage for me and JJ's. Line 2660 from Chad Daybell to Lori-Vallow. She is at 0.13. I turned up the pain to 10 and placed a spiritual virus in her. He is at 99.99. Raphael visited him and told him to follow Amy into the light. I also assured him that James would love and take care of his mommy, which he will with all of his heart and soul. Line 2658 from Lori-Vallow to Chad Daybell. That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
In your review of the evidence and the iCloud in particular, what significance, if any, did the I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary have in context of the investigation?
Hillary is the name of the entity that allegedly possessed or inhibited Tylee Ryan's body.
And so if you saw references to Hillary, based on the context of the iCloud, that was talking about the spirit in Tylee Ryan's body.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in there's a communication where Lori-Vallow is asking Chad to find out her percentages for me and JJ. What did that mean in context of your review of the iCloud?
The reference to the word percentage is a reference to death percentage, meaning the timing or pending death of the individual.
And so there seems to be a response from Chad Daybell to Lori-Vallow about a number, that percentage and timing of impending death. Is that what we see in line 2660?
Correct. You see two different numbers.
Okay. What are those? If you could explain those to us.
Objection, Your Honor. This is going to call for him to speculate as to what these numbers are. I don't think there's any real proof, and I don't think there's been any testimony as to what these numbers are.
Sustained.
Your Honor, were you familiar and did you read almost the entire iCloud?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any information that would lead you to understand what those percentages mean?
Yes.
What information was contained in the documents, which were the defendant's own words, right?
Yes.
What information did you learn in the iCloud that would lead you to understand what those numbers meant in context of the defendant's statements and those statements of her co-conspirators?
There are three total conversations or sets of text strings regarding the death percentage for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell. There's this one, there's another that occurs on July 30th, and then the third one occurs on August 10th. The content of these three text conversations builds upon one another, and in the subsequent text messages, there is again references to being close to.
If you'll just
1 moment, please.
Moment. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff.
Thanks.
You can continue.
Thank you, Judge. I'm sorry, you got cut off. You were talking about reviewing multiple conversations about death percentages. And could you explain to us how it is you conclude what that means in context of the defendant's own words and the statements of our code of conspirators?
Well, the closer an individual was to 0 in some instances, or in this instance with JJ, 100, the closer they were to their death.
Okay. And what information did Chad Daybell provide to lori-vallow about a number associated with Tylee?
He indicates that she is at 0.13.
And what number did Chad Daybell provide about JJ's death percentage?
99.99.
Okay. Did you see references throughout the iCloud in the defendant's own words and the statements of her co-conspirators to lead you to understand who Raphael was?
Yes, Raphael is one of the other 2 names that was used by Chad Daybell.
Names associated with himself?
Yes.
Okay. What was the other name again?
James.
Okay. And is that the reference to the individual later in that same section?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in response to this death percentage for Tylee and the death percentage to JJ, what was the defendant's response?
That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
Turning to text communications reflected later in the iCloud, was there additional communication between Chad Daybell and lori-vallow on July 18th after the conversation about the death percentage for JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Could you please, are those reflected in slide 21?
Yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2656 from Chad Daybell to lori-vallow. You are so adorable, beautiful, wonderful, heavenly, luscious, and angelic. So many divine attributes rolled into one dynamic, desirable package. I want you even more desperately than you want me. Line 2622 from Chad Daybell to lori-vallow. Just grab me by the storm, and I will follow you to the ends of the universe. Line 2608 from lori-vallow to Chad Daybell. When might that be? Line 2607 from Chad Daybell to lori-vallow. Wednesday evening, and then repeatedly and gloriously until Friday.
And that communication continues, correct?
The next slide as well, yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2605 from lori-vallow to Chad Daybell. And then what? Line 2604 from lori-vallow to Chad Daybell. Back to crying and saying goodbye. Back to the box. Line 2603 from Chad Daybell to lori-vallow. This trip to Utah had a lot of finality to it. I was told extreme changes are coming for me and to Utah. I welcome them both.
Now, in the text communication that's displayed to us on slides 21 and 22, why did you include this part of that communication in your summary for presentation in court?
Mainly for 2 reasons. One, it substantiates the affair that was being had between Chad Daybell and lori-vallow, and it references a trip that Chad Daybell was planning to take to visit lori-vallow the next week. So this text is on July 18th, 2019. Chad Daybell's travel to visit lori-vallow in Arizona took place July 24th through July 26th, 2019, which is a Wednesday through Friday. So if you look at line 2607, it states Wednesday evening, until Friday.
Are you aware of what some of the phrase "grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the earth" meant?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay. What did that mean?
The word storm is the name they had given to Chad Daybell's penis.
Okay. And so this was in anticipation of getting together with each other for sexual purposes?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time, Chad Daybell, was he still married to Tammy?
Yes.
How far from Charles Vallow's death was that?
This is 7 days after Charles Vallow's death.
And at the end of the communication, there's some lines about, and then what, back to crying and saying goodbye. Do you see those on slide 22?
I do.
What, if any, significance in terms of your review of the entire iCloud did that part of the conversation have to the investigation?
It's a reference to their relationship and the fact that it is now one-sided due to Lori Vallow being no longer married.
And what about the trip to Utah? What, if any, significance did that have in context of the other interviews and evidence that had been reviewed?
I don't particularly think the trip to Utah has a lot of significance. It's just one of the texts that concluded this string.
Okay. And the statement, I was told extreme changes are coming for me and Utah? Was that from Chad Daybell?
That's a reference from Chad Daybell regarding changes that he is anticipating.